Join us live every Tuesday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on GluFM for Minding Your Business with me, Attorney Rishma Eckert, to discuss the law and your business. Email us with your questions at info@mybshow.com. And remember, success comes from minding your business. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Minding Your Business. I am your host, Rishma Eckert, with Eckert Law, PLLC. We are a business law firm, but today we're taking it a little bit different, and I'll explain to you why. Before we get into all that, let's do our regular housekeeping. The PPP loan is still available on SBA.gov. For those of you who need assistance with your business funding, those of you who have been affected by the pandemic, if you're looking for funding, I believe the PPP program is going to be closed at the end of May, so make sure that you're in there. If you already had a first wave of funding, you are still eligible for the second wave. So go ahead, look at the eligibility requirements, see if you are eligible, and go ahead and apply. It is money from the government to help your business. Also, if you want to be one of our MYB Small Business Spotlight businesses, please go ahead and email me at info@mybshow.com. It is a way for us to highlight your business so that you can have exposure for your goods and services in Florida, New York, Canada, UK, Jamaica, Asia. Where am I missing, Lisa?
I think that's pretty
Kentucky.
much, yeah.
I think that's it, yes,
Yeah.
but that's a lot. So if you want to go ahead and make sure that you can have that exposure, talk about your goods and services, please go ahead and email us so that we can schedule a date for you to be on the show. Also, if there's a topic that I have not covered relating to your business that you would like for me to cover, please go ahead and email me at info@mybshow.com. We do an Ask MYB section, and I have created entire programs around questions from our listeners, and it's been very informative and helpful for us to be able to create content that you like.
Yes.
So today, very, very different show. We're going to be talking about you and the police. And because we still talk about law and the community, this is going to be more focused on your do's and your don'ts, your rights when interacting with the police. Before we get to my very special guest, I'm doing my quote of the week, and it is by Betsy Hodges, and she says, "True public safety requires a collaboration between law enforcement and the community." Because at the end of the day, I believe we all want the same purpose, which is to have public safety. So that is the big picture that we're looking at. And I want to say before we turn to our guest today, that for this show, I'm not going to go very tangential on my social justice platforms that I like to be on in my personal life. We're not going to be talking about this from an emotional point of view. We're not going to be talking about this from an advocacy point of view. What I would like to do is really, honestly, what the show is about, giving information to the public on how to interact with the police, giving information of what you should do and you should not do. But this is not going to be a show where I'm going to ask our special guest, tell me what you think about this specific case, or tell me what should happen. That's not what I want. This is not what the show is about. I would like to just give information to our listeners so that we can be better informed as citizenry. So with that said, I would like to introduce my very special guest, Houson Lafrance. He is a criminal defense attorney in Florida. For our listeners out there, this is a Florida law. And I will go ahead and have Ray say hello and introduce himself.
So hello, everyone. Like Rishma so kindly said, I am a criminal defense attorney here in South Florida. I do take cases all over the state of Florida. My practice mainly deals with criminal defense, whether it's misdemeanor or felony crimes, anything from petty theft to first-degree homicides, right? I've been doing that for the last 7 years. In addition to that, I'm also a professor of law at St. Thomas University, where I teach trial advocacy, and I continue to build the next wave of trial lawyers that, you guys would be seeing in the future. With that being said, I'm ready to answer any and all questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Can I call you Ray? I know, you go under Houson, but I know Ray from law school. We have remained very good friends, even in our practice. And he is the first person I thought about, and I texted him because, again, I won't go very tangential, but I was getting very upset watching certain coverages of certain trials. And I thought about him and about all the knowledge that he has in his head that he could probably impart on my listeners. And he so graciously agreed to do this. I would also like to say that Ray is the only other attorney that I've had on the show. Everyone else I've had business services or someone advertising their business or talking about their goods. He is the only other attorney, so you're in a very special place, Ray. And I thought about it as you were on. I saw your face on the camera. You're the only male that I've had as a special guest. Yeah. And I never thought about that until I just saw you on camera. Okay. So you are a first for a lot for my show. And you're the first topic that is not business related. Okay. This is really something that I thought about, that this has nothing to do with helping your business, but everything to do with helping you as an individual. Mm-hmm. And part of me selfishly wanted Ray on the show because I'm going to be asking him questions that I don't even know the answers to, that I would like to know, because it's, it tends to be a scary world out there. And the more informed we are, the better that we're going to be able to handle ourselves. Right. So let's just jump right into it. The topics of the day: traffic stops. Traffic stops. Man, I see so much on TV that you get confused what you can do, what you can't do. So I'll just start off by saying, Ray, when a police officer stops you, we're talking about a general traffic stop. What documents are they allowed to ask you for?
Here's the thing. They can ask for anything that they want to be quite honest with you. Now, whether or not you're required to give it to them is a totally separate thing. So in a traffic stop, if they are stopping you for a traffic infraction, normally it's the standard. Can I see your license and insurance and all that other information, right? Your registration. That's perfectly fine. They can ask for that. And because, especially in Florida, driving isn't a right. A lot of people are surprised to learn that, the fact that you can drive a car isn't a right. It's actually a privilege in the state of Florida. Because you have that license, you are compelled to turn over your license, your registration, your insurance, and give it to the officer. That you must do. Now, anything beyond that, if the officer says, let me get your bank statements, what would he need your bank statements for, right? Let me get a copy of your birth certificate.
Or your green card. What about your green card? Like if you're an immigrant.
Exactly. So if your green card is your ID, though, I do want to say, because if he's asking for identification, because I know I've had situations where someone's only ID was their green card. In that situation, that's your identification, share it. Now, anything beyond him just using that just to get basic information is, if he says, oh, I see you're from here, from this country or whatever, and start asking questions beyond that's irrelevant. You don't need to answer that under no circumstances. But for the most part, just those basic things.
So, I have a lot of my bullet points, but I'm going to be jumping back and forth because as we talk, questions come in my head. If he starts asking you like, hey, for me, I see that, your license plate, you have Belize. Well, you're from Belize. How long have you lived here? What can I say that's a very respectful way of saying, I don't have to answer your questions, or I would prefer not to answer those questions? If you don't want to engage in any polite conversation with the cop because you don't know what they're trying to, get out of you. At least that's how I see it.
So my general advice to a lot of people is always this. When you're dealing with the police, no matter how much you want to just fire off on them, always start with this phrase: respectfully, officer, I would feel more comfortable if we can just take care of what caused you to stop me. That's it. Because what ends up happening is police officers, when they get attitude, they're going to say, oh, I got suspicious. Why are they getting nervous and fidgety? And they do all these things. And it's like, officer, you're making it up. They're looking for a reason to continue and prolong the stop. That's why I tell people, just say respectfully, officer. If let's say it's a speeding ticket, respectfully, officer. I'll just sit here silently while you write your ticket. Anything beyond that, I don't, with all due respect, I don't want to engage. Thank you. And just leave it at that, right? Because anything beyond that can turn into something else.
Right. So, as attorneys, we know the less is more when it comes to being, in answering questions. Less is always more. Have them ask you, and you can not elaborate and whatnot. So we know that. And for our listeners out there, less is more. They're not trying to be your friend. They're not trying to, unless it is a conversation where, oh, I went to Belize last year on a cruise, and something like that. But and you brought up a good point. You said unless they are like, this is a traffic stop, let's just talk about the traffic stop. What information about that traffic stop do they have to give you? Can they just say, this is a traffic violation? Do they have to tell you why? And to what detail do they need to tell you?
That's something that's usually a misnomer. I see a lot of people will, again, in my line of work, I always have a lot of videos where, there's a lot of, why are you stopping? Why? And I always tell people, in those situations, don't ask. Just simply stay quiet. Keep your hands on the wheel. Be safe. The officer will eventually have to tell you why he detained you, right? Because he will either have to come with a ticket, or when they're coming back to give you back your stuff, say, hey, don't do X, Y, and Z anymore. They send you on your merry way. Again, my advice to everyone is the concept, why are you stopping? All that. As soon as you go to 10, remember, officers are going to go to 20. Right? That's why I tell people, look, just be calm. There's literally you gain nothing from arguing with a police officer. That's always my advice there. You gain nothing. That officer will make up an arrest, and, you go to jail. You have to post a bond. You have to hire a lawyer just for charges to get dropped. But look how much of your life is affected by that. Right? And that officer probably doesn't even remember you. He's went on to the next stop, the next case, and doesn't even care.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. That's very true. That's a good point. I never thought about that. That the more agitated you seem, the more suspicion that they can justify to say, well, I just asked a basic question, and she went off the handle about how she's not talking about any Caribbean country she's ever been to, and now I'm suspicious. So, they can use that as something to further their narrative of what's happening. Yeah. So to continue with our questions, so I see a lot of, the reason that we know a lot about these traffic stops is because someone is recording somewhere, whether it's the person, that lieutenant that was recording in his car, whether it's a bystander. What are your rights regarding recording police officers in their line of duty?
You can record the police. Now, police officers may say, "Oh, you can't record." They'll make stuff up. You can record police.
I've seen a lot of videos that way too.
Yeah, so long as you're not interfering, you're free to record the police, right? Like what? It's the public road. There's no law against filming the road or any incident. Just don't because I've seen this happen. I've seen a video of this, and there was a very interesting argument in that particular case, but trying to take the camera and run into the mix, no, you can't do that.
Right. As long as you're safely as a bystander.
Yeah, you're just filming. What can the police say to you? They're going to say, hey, turn off that camera. Hey, I'm just filming, right? Because what does the First Amendment say? Freedom of press. It doesn't define what qualifies as press. The press is whoever's reporting the news. That's what this is, right? Freedom of press. Hey, I'm here. I'm just recording. I'm not doing anything.
I've seen a ton of videos on YouTube where you have police officers that will tell the person who gets pulled over that you can't record me. You have to stop. You have to put your phone down. You can't.
So in that situation, I would tell people, if you are the subject of the police encounter, don't record. Because, and I say that as just a very practical matter. That officer can turn a camera into a gun like that, right? In his mind. I thought it was a gun. And all of a sudden now, you're a victim of something more because you wanted to record. If anything, the moment you get out that car and somebody else is around you, hey, can you please record this? Don't do it yourself. if you are the subject of the police encounter, because it is not worth it to want to record this, right? And the officer, again, I don't want to bring in current topics, but a taser and a gun.
Right.
That. These police officers will make these kind of justifications. And just as quickly as you said, I pulled out my phone to record, in their mind, that's the gun, and they're going to act accordingly. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, look at my phone, right? It's a dark color.
Right.
Now, if I were to do this, they're going to see the light shining off this, and somebody may say, that's a gun.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
I would advise those, if you're the subject to it, don't record. If you're watching and you want to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, feel free to do it from a safe distance and don't interfere.
That's some very good advice, because I always thought, and just from me personally, that if I ever got pulled over, the first thing that I would start doing is recording.
Yes,
But then again, I have a lot of different other considerations. If I'm driving by myself at night, I'm a woman. These are different things that I would think about.
Call the police.
You brought up a very good question. It's actually one of my bullet point questions. Do you have to disclose weapons that you have in the car for a traffic stop? Do you have to say, officer, I have a legally registered firearm in my glove compartment. I have a knife. I have a taser. I have a box cutter, whatever the case may be. Do you have to disclose that to the police for a traffic stop?
If it's a traffic stop, and obviously this is not legal advice.
Right. This is general information.
Yeah, general information.
They can drop that disclaimer again, when you're done with your question, your answer. But yes.
So what I would say is a practical matter, if they're stopping you for a traffic ticket and you are a lawful weapon owner, you don't need to disclose that. What does that question have to do with this ticket, right? What does it have to do with the fact that I was speeding? I was crashing into the back of someone. What difference does that make, right? As a practical matter, I would never say that, because what ends up happening is you say weapon and they turn that into a full-blown search. Right. They're going to search your entire car. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. The weapon is safe away. I'm not armed. It's not on my person. And again, I've seen it to where people have literally told the officer, hey, officer, would you like for me to step out of the car and you can pat me down and see I don't have any weapons? I'm even willing to step away from the vehicle so you don't think I'm going to go reach for a weapon. Right. It really has to be that way. Unfortunately, in our climate, it really has to be that way.
Wow.
What
if they ask?
I'm sorry?
What if they ask? Because I've seen videos where the officer would ask, do you have any so-and-so on you or in the vehicle? What if they ask you? Can you disclose at that point, or do you still have the right to refrain, refuse to answer that question?
I mean, look, technically, you don't have to answer that, technically. Now, if if it's an arrestable offense, right? So, and let's say the
DUIs, like let's say it's a DUI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anything that they're going to impound the vehicle for, feel free to tell them. Tell them, because there's literally no reason to hide that, because they're going to find it anyway. They're going to do a inventory search of the vehicle. If it's like basic traffic tickets, you don't want that to prolong and escalate into something else, right? So my advice is going to be, it depends on the situation. I know if it were me, I'm not disclosing anything, right? Unless I know it's like, okay, I'm going to jail, right? Which as a lawyer, I shouldn't be going to jail, but it can happen. Say, look, I'm going to jail. There's a weapon in my car. I would disclose it then, right? Okay. On that same note, I will say that a lot of times, do you have any weapons in the car can turn into, do you have any drugs in the car? And a lot of people immediately just start agreeing to a bunch of stuff. And this traffic ticket now turns into a felony stop, all in the span of 5 minutes, because you answered something you really didn't understand what you were answering, right?
Yeah.
And remember, police officers can lie to you. A lot of people don't know that, but police officers can lie to you when they're investigating you. They can lie. So
what about if a police officer, you're chatting with him, and Rishma said earlier that they're not trying to be your friend, okay? So let's get that out the way.
But disclaimer on my part, I'm very paranoid and I don't trust anyone. So that's just my general personality. So I'm not immediately thinking this guy's going to be my buddy and my pal. That's just me personally.
But you see, some of them approach you that way. They approach you, because I've been stopped by the police before, but nothing serious, like a brake light or something like that, and I was stopped, and they approach you so nicely. I'm like, yeah, maybe we could be friends, But let's say they pull you over, and they're being nice, and they ask you, hey, is it okay if I just search your car and make sure that there's nothing? He's already shaking his head. No.
You're jumping ahead of me, Lisa. I have an entire section on searches that I want to ask.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
But yeah, you're jumping way ahead of me. But to Lisa's point, they come up and they're very friendly and they're asking you these questions. But if you don't feel comfortable, what Ray is saying is if you don't feel comfortable answering, my response, and I'm gonna have you on speed dial, Ray, just in case it doesn't go well. My response would be that I'm just, I'm not comfortable answering that. It's a traffic stop, whatever, and a lot of times I don't want to, because then that leads to, hey, where are you going? Where are you coming from? Where, what's your next stop? Who lives with you? Whatever the case may be, it just escalates. And that's one of the questions I think I missed, Ray. If they ask you, like, I'm being very technical and I'm kind of like really pouncing on you with these questions because I feel like this is more of a consultation session for me, and now our listeners are just being benefited by that. But if they ask you, can they ask you, like, so where are you headed and where are you coming from and why are you in this neighborhood or something like that? Because that's not technically about the car or the brake lights or the speed in or whatever, but they just want to get a gauge of who you are. If they look at your license and they see I live in North Broward, why are you in Miami-Dade? Why are you in Palm Beach? Why are you, can they ask you questions like that? Where your whereabouts, where you're going, what you're up to?
Yeah, look, here's the thing. They can ask you whatever. Now,
it's whether you refuse. Can I refuse to answer?
Yeah,
I guess that should be it.
You don't have to answer that. When police officers ask where I'm going, my answer is always the same to any officer. I'm driving till I run out of gas. That's it. I'm driving till I run out of gas. But here's the thing. It's nobody's concern where I'm going or where I have come from, right? The answer is always, I'm driving till I run out of gas, officer. Why is that important? Or you asking me, officer, if they insist, because it will happen. Officers, they insist. Because they try to turn that kind of, refusal to, oh, you're hiding something. What are you hiding? Say, look, I'm not hiding anything. I just want to get this over with all due respect.
Yeah.
And sometimes, look, as a black man, if this is on the radio and nobody can see me as a black man, I make it obvious. Listen, I'm a black man in the South. I will make it painfully obvious for you that I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Let's get this over and done with. If I was speeding, which I don't speed, but if I was speeding, if I was doing something, write me the ticket. I'm not going to argue with you. That's okay. I understand that arguments belong in courts, not in the street. I'm cool, right? So if an officer asks you, where were you going? Officer, with all due respect, I don't feel comfortable answering that question. Can we, can you just let me know? Exactly. Let's just move on our way. Because the thing is the biggest thing is I tell everyone, whether it's clients, whether it's just anybody in the public that I've spoken to, I always say, listen, you do not want to turn the level up on a stop, because what happens is the officer will match and exceed you. Because if you are at 10, that officer goes to 20. If you're at 20, that officer goes to 40, right? And that's what turns these basic encounters into like YouTube videos, is pretty much what they turn into.
Yeah.
Just be calm. Because here's the other thing that, like, I want you to know, Rishma, is like that officer is being recorded on his own body-worn camera. Let's say your case has to end up in front of a jury. The 6 people who have to decide your case are going to get to see that video. Do you want to be the person who is ranting, screaming, raving, and then look, the reality is a lot of people are always going to be pro-police? Or do you want to be the person who's calm and they say, this police officer is wrong, this person's being calm, like this is absolutely uncalled for? I say that because as a practitioner, I've actually sat in those courtrooms and had to, say, hey, members of the jury, you're going to see how my client acted on the video. My client was calm. The officer was the one, playing RoboCop, right? Those kind of things. So I always say, look, be calm. They ask those questions, officer, I don't feel comfortable. You can answer those questions if you want to, but keep it brief. Where are you coming from?
Home.
Coming from
work.
Home. Where are you going? To Taco Bell. Where, like, you don't have to give them, I'm running out of gas. I do that because, that's just me. And
you're a criminal defense attorney. So
I am, yes.
The second you say, yes, I work in this, I'm a criminal defense attorney.
But you can just give a basic answer. Where are you coming from? Home. Where are you going? Taco Bell.
Right.
What's wrong? You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying?
I was just wondering about that because let's say you're, you, like I said, you live in a specific neighborhood and you're far away from where you're supposed to be.
Hmm.
Like, I drive to visit my family in Tampa a lot. If I'm somewhere in between, they're like, wow, you're really far away from home. What are you doing here?
I got family
Really?
that lives everywhere.
Yeah, like it's really, quite frankly, none of their business. It
It it
really isn't.
it absolutely is not.
But you, like you said, you want to make sure that you're in control of what you're doing because
Hmm.
I see on the show a lot in terms of business, all things lead to litigation. So it's
Absolutely,
like all things lead to litigation. And if we
absolutely.
have to get into a dispute situation, you want to make sure that you're representing yourself well, that you're not
Absolutely.
flailing, you're not cursing at them, even though you're thinking it in your head,
Yeah.
maybe you're not doing any of that. But you said a good segue to my next question. I have a question about, do you have to get out of a car if a police officer says step out of your car?
Yes. The reason why I say that is if you don't get out of the car, they're going to take you out of the car. At that point, that officer, and this is what they'll say. For officer safety, I want you to step out of the car. That's usually what they say. That's usually their justification. I always tell people, look, do they really have the right to? Probably not. But should you? I think you should. But obviously exercise caution with that. Now, if it's you and like 10 officers and you're alone, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like ask the officer if you can use your phone in front of them to call 911 or
Yeah,
call somebody. I don't
but they're
know.
not going to say yes to that, obviously. If
Nah, they probably won't. But like, see, a lot of these are kind of tough because I would tell people just just get out the car because you don't want to be dragged out the car, right?
right, right.
Um,
Like one of the scenarios I gave my husband, I said, I'm watching these videos on the news and YouTube, and I go, if we're talking about 3 or 4 cops and I'm by myself at night and I'm driving and someone is being very aggressive, because some of these cops can be
yeah,
very aggressive
absolutely.
towards me and I don't feel safe, what do I do? And my husband told me, call 911. I
Yeah.
go, wait a minute. So I'm calling the cops on the cops, and he goes, yeah, you
Hmm.
can.
Wow.
But obviously,
Yeah.
they're not going to
Wow.
be happy with that. And I don't want to be pulling my phone as well and thinking that
Yeah.
it's some sort of weapon. But I mean, it's such a tough situation
It
because
is.
you don't want to compromise where you are and
Mm-hmm.
to wait for cops to come and help you. And you don't want to be pulling phones and doing things that they don't want you to do because now they're going to get caught.
Yeah.
So it's super tough. I think it's like, I don't envy the type of work you do. I love what I do. I absolutely love the type of work I do. And I don't envy the work that you do because if you're stepping out of the car, that means that they're not going to frisk you,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're going to search you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not telling you to step out just because they want to see your outfit, right? So they're going to end up searching you, and that can lead to searching your car, correct?
Yep. Well, searching your car, no, they would have no reason to search your car.
So let's talk about that for our listeners out there who have not taken con law with us. If the officer says, "Come out of the car," I want you to step out of the car for officer safety, whatever the case
Mm-hmm.
that they may give you. Because apparently, I don't think that they even have to tell you what it is. Because in these videos, they never say why. They
Mm-hmm.
just say, "Step out of the car,"
Mm-hmm.
even though it's one of you and like 10 cops. But whatever. I digress. They tell you to step out of the car. Can they now go search your car for our listeners out there?
Oh. So here's the thing. In order to search a car, you have to have probable cause, right? You have to have probable cause to believe that a crime is committed, has been committed, or is about to be committed, that there's evidence of narcotics or a gun or something in the car, right? So like you can't turn a traffic stop into a fishing expedition. You just can't. That's why if you notice, officers always say, to Elisa's point earlier, do you mind if I just search your car? That's why
And
they
you
do that.
say and you say no. If you say no, that's the end of it.
That's the end of it. Because what happens is, and again, I've seen this so many times. It always breaks my heart. I don't understand why people agree to let officers search. Officer says, "Can I search your car?" They always say, "Well, yeah." Why did you say yes?
Because they don't think that they have anything in their
Oh
car
no, no.
that's like
Let's. Oh.
okay. That's right. We have different clientele. So you go ahead.
But the whole point is like you say yes, and like if you would have said no, I would have had a great motion to suppress. And for the audience who don't know, that's a motion that says, "Judge, we should throw out this case because this police officer's actions violated the Fourth or Fifth or Sixth Amendment," right? Like, that's the Constitution, and that's the thing. Like, when you have the Constitution being violated, which is the supreme law in our land, most judges are hard pressed to tell you no. And even if they do tell you no, like I always tell clients, hey, if the judge says no, we can appeal that. Now we're just creating more issues that at some way, somehow, if this doesn't go your way, we can always come back and do this again. Right now, obviously, I know clients don't want to hear that, but my job is to cover you 360, not just, hey, that's,
that one thing.
This one thing. I cover you 360. Hey, you're protected here, you're protected here, you're protected here. That's my job. So when officers ask you if they can search, the answer is no. Why can't I search if you have nothing to hide? Because the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution says I can be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. I did not write the Constitution, officer, but that's the one that you took an oath to protect.
And in that moment, they know you're an attorney.
But you don't even have to be an attorney. You can just say that as a common person.
I know. That's your constitutional right. I mean, just to break it down in more layman's terms, that's your constitutional right. So how is it not? So how can you not refuse them searching you when you come out of the car? Then, like, can you? That's
because when they search you, they're and it's just a pat down. They can't like go into your pockets. A pat down is just for their safety. Like, it's they have reason to believe that you may be armed and dangerous, right? And it's their belief. And look, if officer says that they had the reason to believe, most judges agree with them, unfortunately. I believe they may have been armed and dangerous. Okay, well, that was okay, and they leave it alone.
Very
right?
Subjective, huh?
It's incredibly subjective.
Okay.
Incredibly. But they'll pat you down. They cannot go in your pockets. They cannot pull out your phone.
Tell you to open your purse?
No. Why would they need to go in your purse?
I'm just asking because women don't carry stuff in their pockets usually.
No, but they would need probable cause in order to, like, if your purse is already open, there's this doctrine called plain view. It's right there. I can look at it. Right now, can they go
unzip, look through?
No.
Okay.
If they can probably feel and see if they feel something, sure, right? But like opening up containers is like the legal term for like glove box or the little middle console, purses, wallets, and they need probable cause for that, right? And their biggest probable cause, as an aside, used to be the smell of marijuana. Yeah. Thankfully, society has now moved to the point where marijuana is now legal, and that's not probable cause anymore, right? So you won't have officers just carte blanche just saying, I smell weed, and searching your car.
So what's the newest, greatest hits then, if that's off the table?
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I have not had a lot of cases like that. They are just straight up asking, hey, can I search your car? And unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are saying, yeah, go ahead.
So then the officer where are the problems then?
Yeah, like the officer finds 20 pounds of marijuana or cocaine or something. It's like, okay, should have never said yes, but okay.
We have a saying in the Caribbean that fish get caught by their mouths, right? So it's something like that. Of course, I'm not going to say it in Creole, but we have that saying because it's true. Just be quiet. Don't say anything.
Listen, the best advice I can give anybody dealing with the police, say as little or nothing at all. You're under no obligation. Just, no, you don't have to say anything. But that's we can talk about that later.
Yeah, we have a question from a listener.
Okay.
Lisa, you want to read it? Do you have it?
No, go ahead. Rishma.
Okay. If you see police flashing lights behind you, do you have to stop immediately, or can you drive to a safe, lit place before you stop? If you choose the latter, would this be considered a chase? Is this your right to stop at a place you consider safe? Good question, listener.
That's a great question. You should definitely drive slowly. Don't like what people do in those instances.
Get away.
They hit the gas and get the, and they'll say, oh, I was looking for a safe space. Like, no, drive slowly.
Maybe put your hazard lights on. Yeah. Sometimes I do that. I'll put my hazard so they know that I see them.
That you recognize. That's absolutely perfect. You drive slowly to a well-lit location. And then when you get there, you stop. You don't say anything. If the officer says, why did you keep driving? You say, officer, I was just driving until I got to a safe location, and stay there. That's it. Say nothing more beyond that. I was just driving until I got to a safe location. And the reason why you do that is, again, we're always thinking about maybe a jury's going to hear this. Maybe a judge is going to hear this. And you know that body-worn camera is running. And you want your explanation to be, I was just driving until I got to a safe location. any person who sees that is going to be like, yeah, there's
Makes
nothing
sense.
criminal. Yeah, there's nothing criminal about that. That makes sense. That's what they tell people in their PSAs. Do that, right? So that's why you say that. But to answer their question, you can go to a safe location. Just don't all of a sudden do 100. Don't do that.
Would they be considering that resisting because they told
yeah,
you to stop and you
yeah,
didn't
no.
stop?
It's going to be fleeing and eluding. But again, my thing is this: if the officer has an intention to arrest you, there's no amount of talking or negotiation you can do to stop that arrest from happening.
Right.
None.
Wow, that's really helping my paranoia, Ray. Thank you.
Listen. I'd rather give you the ugly truth.
No, but you're absolutely right. They make that, I don't want this to turn into police bashing because that's not what we're doing here.
No.
We just want to inform the public of how to act because it is, like you said, a lot of your issues are the fact that your clients have opened their mouths and said things that they're not supposed to say. But that's a very good question, listener, because you're right, especially if it's late. Again, I always say late at night, I'm by myself. I'm not pulling over at the side of I-95 to talk to a cop, right? So not even on the on-ramp. I've seen that happen where cars are pulled over on the on and off ramps. And I thought, how dangerous is that?
Yeah.
How extremely dangerous is that?
Yeah, it's dangerous for you and the officer.
Right.
I mean, oftentimes, I'm pretty sure the officer probably would rather you not pull over on the side of the road near like cars going 60, 50.
Exactly.
They're like, yo, if you want to pick a safe place, we do too. Like, let's go to a well-lit gas station or something.
Good deal.
A question, Rishma, before you move on to your next bullet point. I've seen videos where a person gets pulled over and even before the cop walks up, they will put their license and their registration in he's laughing in the window area, and they will put the window just a little bit up before it closes, and then the officer would walk up and they'll say, do you mind putting or can you please put your window down while I'm speaking to you? And then the person would say, I don't feel safe doing that. Can you just explain what are the disadvantages and advantages, and or even if we are allowed to do that?
I don't know of any law against doing that. That's actually, I think that came about because of the unfortunate incidences that happened.
Yeah.
As a practical matter, I probably wouldn't do that because I feel like somebody can see that as consciousness of guilt. You did something wrong, so you're immediately pulling out your license, registration, and insurance, and you're like, here, I did something wrong. Don't talk to me, right? Like,
or you're being suspicious again, you get that subjective suspicion by the cops.
I will admit to you, I don't think I've ever had a case like that before, where somebody had that little. I've always seen it in the Midwest on those videos. The last one I saw might have been in like Indiana or something, where somebody did that. And they were that stop turned into a whole other ordeal. I would say I don't think there's any rule against it. Now, I think an officer probably doesn't want to talk to glass. So when they're talking to glass, that's when their personal feelings are hurt, and they're like, "Oh, you want to be disrespectful to me?" And now they're looking for reasons to escalate the stop. Because from their point of view, they're probably thinking, not to get in the officer's head, they're probably thinking you have the window up because it probably smells like weed in there. Or I might be able to smell contraband or something like that.
Right.
Gotcha.
So that's interesting. I will submit to you that I've never seen that in Florida. I imagine that it does happen, and I'm not aware of any rules that prohibit you from doing that. I don't see why that would be a problem. You're going to ask me for my license, registration, and insurance. I'm just helping you out. It's right there for you.
Everything is a nice, neat packet.
Yeah, it's all right there for you. Feel free to grab it, officer.
Right. And it's also an indication, Elisa, I guess they're just not answering any more questions, right? So if they know that that's what the officer is going to ask, here you go. It's kind of like a literal barrier to you as being asked questions about things.
That was the
concern to stop.
That was the explanation that they gave for doing that. That
they don't want to answer any more questions,
right,
regarding anything.
So hold on, I do want to add one thing, and I just thought about this. All right, let's say in that scenario where that person does that, I don't know there's any rules prohibiting that, but let's say, because I did see this before, there's a car accident, right? You rear end someone, but you stay in your car and then now the police are coming and you do that. At that point, you can't do that because at least in Florida, when you're in a car accident, you are compelled to answer certain questions, right? They call it the accident report privilege without obviously it being used against you. So if an officer says what was happening, asking for the scenario in relation to a crash, you're compelled to answer those questions in Florida because, again, driving is not a right, it is a privilege. And part of that is answering, those basic questions just so we can find out how the crash happened. So that would be the only caveat
Gotcha.
that I would put on it.
Oh, that's actually a very good point. I never even thought about that because I'm thinking traffic stops, but not necessarily accidents.
Yeah, because
On the road, yeah.
accidents is a big one, especially in DUI practice. Accidents are a very, very, very big area of litigation. So,
I should delve into that a little bit more, but I want to do my questions first. And if we have time, I'll ask you a couple of questions because I did hear about a case with a young lady. But anyway, one of my questions that I have here is, I know we talked a lot about what you should say, not say, what they can ask, not ask, what you can refuse to answer. Can they arrest you for refusing to answer questions?
yeah, they can. Whether or not it holds up in court is a whole totally different answer. But this is the best way I explain it to clients, right? Probable cause, honestly, they can find that almost anywhere because probable cause is akin to 50-50. That's pretty much what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think you obstructed me, so I'm going to arrest you for resisting without violence, which is just interrupting, obstructing a police officer in the execution of their duties, right? So if that officer is trying to investigate something and you won't answer and you're doing it in a way that's like obstructing, they can arrest you for that. Now, whether or not the prosecutor says this is enough to bring charges is a totally different other story. Or whether or not a jury says this is enough to convict you beyond a reasonable doubt is a totally different other story. I know that doesn't make a lot of people feel comfortable, but this is the reality of it because in truth, a lot of people are arrested on flimsy probable cause, go to court and take a plea, and they either don't hire a private attorney or don't get a public defender. And sometimes when the judge is giving the instructions or somebody's talking in court, all they hear is pay court costs, and this all goes away. People pay it, or they'll say, you could potentially be punished up to 364 days.
Yeah.
And people don't hear the potentially; they just hear 364 days in jail. But you can close it out today to court costs, and people are like, I want the court costs. I don't want to go to jail. Them not understanding that the judge has to warn you of what your maximum penalty can be doesn't mean that is what it will be. Right. So the system takes advantage of the ignorance, unfortunately.
Right. Especially too, and I want to just add on to that. If you're an immigrant to this country and you have immigration requirements that you have to abide by, because unfortunately I did see this when my brief internship at the state attorney's office, there wasn't someone advising, for whatever reason, there wasn't someone advising immigration consequences of even taking pleas. So if you're an immigrant to this country and you're under a specific green card or you want to do an application for an adjustment of status, these are all the things that they're going to ask you, and you have to really explore all your consequences before you decide to take a plea on something like that. But I asked you that question, Ray, because of we talked about you don't have to tell the officer where you're going, why you're in that neighborhood or whatnot. Can they say, I guess they can say anything, but would they be able to have a justification to say, you didn't tell me why you were here, I'm going to now take you down to the police station?
They could, but here's the thing. And I'll go back to one of my favorite documents ever created, the Constitution. The Fifth Amendment says you cannot be a witness upon yourself. You cannot be compelled to be a witness against yourself. You cannot incriminate yourself. So if your denial or refusal to answer their questions, is them trying to compel you to give stuff that's against your interests, you walk into my office and tell me that story, I'm like, we're filing a motion to suppress, right? And that's just a bunch of cases shown to a judge or to a prosecutor and said, the law is pretty clear. We can either read the plain language or we can read how judges in Florida have decided this.
And look at the body cam, right?
And everything's on camera, right? That's one of the good things about more recent times. We have a lot of body worn camera that none of these incidences are, your word against the officers anymore. It's just what the camera says.
And that's all of Florida, right? That you must put on your body cam.
I think most of Florida. I think there's some places that don't have. Now, admittedly, I haven't practiced outside of the Tri-County.
Well, in our Tri-County, then, it's mandatory.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the Tri-County, I want to say most offices have body-worn camera, especially in Miami-Dade. Most offices have a body-worn camera. I think in Broward as well, and Palm Beach. Yeah. So I want to say I'm not aware of any police department that doesn't have one, but I'm sure there may be one or two.
Well, good. That's very good to know. All of this, I'm just taking this in like it's a personal consult for me, but I'm just taking it in because this is really good information to have. Now, a question that came to mind when I was working at the, interning with the state attorney, I got a chance to witness, I guess it would be a pre-trial or trial, where the person being arrested started blabbing the second that he was put behind the, I shouldn't say it like that. He started talking when he was put behind the police car. The question was he being detained or not? Right, that was the question before the judge. Because they're saying, of course the police was saying, he said all this stuff voluntarily, and they didn't Mirandarize him, of course. So they were saying we can use it because he said it voluntarily.
Yeah.
And he wasn't being detained. And his argument was, I was being detained because they put me in the back of the police car and I thought I was being detained, but you didn't Mirandarize me. Yeah. So my question to you is this. So now for whatever reason, they decide that they're going to take you down to the police station. At what point are you expected to have your Miranda rights read to you? At what point do you I guess if you're one of those very nervous people and you say, I want to go ahead and just tell you everything now, what would you advise in that point of time? Because are you being detained at the time that they put you in the police car? Are you being detained at the time they take you out of your car? Where does that detention start for you to be aware of your right to remain silent?
I think the moment a police officer asks you to get out your car, you're detained. I think you are seized for purposes of the Fourth Amendment. At that point, and I always tell people, look at it this way. If an officer tells you get out of your car, do you feel like you can just get back in your car and drive away at that point? Mm-hmm. Most people are going to tell you no. Because practically speaking, they told you to get out. You are seized and you're under, you're doing it because they told you, right? You're under their
direction. Yeah. Right. They're under, yeah.
So Miranda only applies when they're going to ask you incriminating questions. But I always say, just go ahead and operate as if anything that they're asking you is incriminating. And don't answer, say, I would like to invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege, or better, say, I would like, this is the better way. I always tell clients, listen, when you're talking to police and they want to talk to you and say, hey, we just want to ask you some questions. The answer is always this. I would love to talk to you, officer. However, I would feel more comfortable if my lawyer was present. That's it. You're not telling them no. You're like, right. I'm not telling you no. I'm just saying I would feel more comfortable with my lawyer present.
Right.
Because at that point, what they start to do is negotiate with you, whether you know it or not. Oh, but why do you need your lawyer present? Why do you have anything to hide? I understand that, officer. However, I would feel more comfortable if my lawyer was present. Because every time that you say something like that, they get annoyed. But the more annoyed that they get with those kind of things where you're in the right, that should tell you that they probably don't have a lot against you, and they're hoping that you will be your own witness.
Right, you're that fish getting caught by your own hook.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just FYI, the motion, the public defenders ended up winning it because the way they described it, and I remember this even though it was 7 years ago, because it was so impactful the way that they argued it, was that the person was sitting in a police car, his legs were out of it, door was open, but he had, I think, 4 or 5 cops surrounding him. And he felt as if exactly what you're saying, that he was under their control. He could not leave voluntarily if he wanted to. And they deemed that he was being detained and he should have had his Miranda rights read to him. And of course, they did not. So they ended up winning that motion, and I thought it was spectacular. And it just brought up a lot of questions in my head about, wow, the things that we don't even think about. Am I being detained or not? And I guess that's why we see it in the in the videos on YouTube as well, you
Yeah.
always hear, am I being detained? Am I being
Am I being
detained?
detained? Yeah.
And going with that question, we have another listener who texted saying something along the lines of what I was asking. If someone is pulled over and is complying with the officer's commands, at what point can the officer is not complying? At what point can the officer put you in handcuffs, or in what scenarios can they handcuff you?
They listen. The officers can do whatever they want. Now, whether or not it passes constitutional muster when you go to court is a totally different story. Like on the street, like I hate to paint this picture, but these police officers, there's not really much that you yourself can do to prevent an officer who is determined to say, I'm taking you to jail. Like there's not much you can do in those situations. Like you can say, hey, can I speak to a supervisor? You can always do that.
Right.
Say, hey, I want to talk to your supervisor.
That was one of my questions as well.
You know, but if you talk to the supervisor, this is the other thing I tell people in those situations, the supervisor is going to show up as going to ask what's going on. And you know what you're going to inevitably end up doing? Especially, let's say you have some culpability. Let's say you might have been doing some reckless driving or something, right? You're going to be explaining to the officer what happened. You're like, oh, I was doing this, this, and this, and this, and this guy stopped me. But what most people don't realize in their explanation is you just confessed to the crime.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is I have seen that happen so many times. And it's one of those things where you have to think to yourself, do I want to be explaining to a supervisor, hoping that he's going to let me go with a ticket? And again, remember what I said earlier, you don't talk your way out of handcuffs. If you're going to jail, you're going to jail. No amount of talking you do is going to change that scenario, right? It's a very pessimistic view, but I think it's the best view for people to understand. Because you're going to go to jail. They're going to take your mugshot, unfortunately. You're going to have to post a bond. But the moment you get out, you call a criminal defense lawyer and say, hey, what happened? And your lawyer will be beyond ecstatic if you never said a word, right? If you never said a word, because you know what's going to happen? The prosecutor is going to probably look at this and be like, I can't prove this. You made a bad arrest. Now, unfortunately for you, you're out of money. You're like, yo, I got arrested. I had to post a bond. I had to pay this lawyer. But at least you don't have it on your record. Whereas if you would have did it the other way and you confessed, all those same things was going to happen, but now you have a record, right? It's one of those things where it's like, it sounds very pessimistic, but my general school of thought is look, don't make their job easy for them. If the officer intends on arresting you, he's going to arrest you or she's going to arrest you. There's nothing you can do about it, right? You can be the most compliant witness. You can follow all their directives. Like actually, I'm going to put asterisks on that. On DUIs, don't do anything. Like if they say, hey, do you want to do these exercises? No. Do you want to give this breathalyzer? No. That's it. Don't do that, because people who comply on DUIs always end up with DUIs, and sometimes they don't even be drunk. So that's the aside. But you can comply with everything. You're going to jail. You're going to jail. That's just the reality of the situation.
My follow-up question.
Hear that?
Yeah, it does suck to hear that, because it's like you have to go through these trials and tribulations to get to the point of exoneration. If that truly is, what you're deserving of after looking at all the facts. I wanted to follow up with that question. One of my questions I have here is, so now at what point do you get an attorney involved? So let's go through sort of the process. You get stopped, they want to arrest you for some reason, they arrest you, take you down to the police station. How does that process work for those who have never been in the system? At what point do you get, is it like in the movies where you get your phone call and you call the cops? Or like, how does that process work?
So usually how it goes is once they arrest you, they normally take you down to the station for booking. You get booked, and then you get put into a holding cell, right, with other people who were arrested that night. I believe you are allowed a call. So usually people call their family. As an aside, when you're making that call to your family, don't give them all the facts of the case, because nothing breaks my heart more than listening to jail calls and my clients confessing to the crime. I'm like,
oh no,
why did you tell your girlfriend that you did this, or like whatever?
Oh,
like, don't
no.
do that. So as an aside, just say, hey, I'm in jail. Can you please post my bond? Or contact a bondsman and say, hey, contact a bondsman, give them my first and last name, and tell them where I'm in jail and ask them to post my bond. That's usually as long as you're not charged with a capital offense, a first-degree felony, or a felony violation of probation, you should have a bond. And your bondsman would be able to post your bond. Now, once your bond is posted and you get out of custody, call a lawyer. If you can afford one, call a private attorney. If you can't afford one, reach out to the public defenders and get that process started, right? Because the quicker somebody can get onto your case, the quicker that certain things can be stopped. Like for instance, if somebody calls me and let's say they were stopped for a reckless driving or I don't know, something silly, and you call me the day after you get out of jail, I know we have 30 days before the arraignment. I might be able to call down to the prosecutor's office, present them whatever information I need to present them, and get them to stop from filing charges, right? Like that's something that I definitely do a lot in my practice, more so than I used to, because as a private attorney, I have the resources and time to make those calls and say, hey, what you have from this officer is not what you think it is, and we can make the case there. But the moment you get out of custody is when you should reach out and contact a private attorney or a public defender if you can't afford one.
Right. So with that said, I want you to let our listeners know all your contact information because I jokingly, when I was putting the show together, I told my husband, if I ever get arrested, I'm going to be like, call Ray Lafrance. And he goes, how am I supposed to get his number when you have your phone with you? I'm like, I don't know, look it up, call him. He's going to be my attorney. But, let our listeners know all your contact information, your socials and everything.
So I can be contacted. I always say email is probably the best way, if not a phone call. So email is Houson@HousonLafrance.com. So my first name is HOUSON at HOUSONLAFRANCE.com. The phone number, the quickest, which is probably quicker, is 954-998-4567. You can call me there. On social media. If you just look up Houson Lafrance, you'll find my Instagram or my Facebook page. I'm there. If you just type my name in Google, it'll pull me up. I've had plenty of people find me via Google, so you can always reach out to Rishma.
Yeah, that's true. You can reach out to the show, info@mybshow.com, and we will happily, if you have any questions after the show, you want his contact information, I will happily share that with you. Tell the public your IG handle because I love it.
So it's showtime.
Very showy, very trial lawyer like. I have so many other questions, but I don't think that we have time to get to them. I just want to skip to the do's and don'ts that I took away from what you're saying today. Do be compliant, right? You want to be respectful. Don't be unnecessarily boisterous or profane to the police officers. Do not just keep on talking and answering questions when you don't have to. Stick to the facts, stick to what the issue is. And if you do get detained and get arrested, make sure that you contact someone who can advocate for you. Hopefully you'll contact Ray because he's great at what he does. But you do need someone to advocate for you because at the end of the day, the state attorneys are going to be looking at whatever the police officers write and take that word as law. Even if they're wrong. And I've had that happen to me on another traffic offense. And I digress, but the police officer wrote in the ticket something that did not happen. And the magistrate did not want to hear my side of it because they said, I'm sorry, you can't argue what's on the ticket because whatever they say goes. And I thought, yeah, it was kind of horrible, but it was a very, very minor thing. So It wasn't like a big deal. But that kind of shocked me because I didn't realize that the officer, of course, wasn't there. The magistrate told me they didn't have to be there unless I decide to take it to trial. Yeah. But whatever they say goes. And you need someone to advocate for your side. If that's the case and that's the view in which they take it, you need someone to advocate for yourself. It's 5:01. Thank you, Ray, so much for doing this. This is so informative. You are awesome. And, everything that's happening in the world today, all the current events sparked this episode. I thought it was very timely, apropos. I think it's very important that we know our rights. And I'm talking about our communities, minorities, immigrants. We know our rights. We have rights in this country. Don't have police officers make you feel like you do not. Even if you can't say, hey, I'm a lawyer, and you pull out your bar card, you still have rights if you're not an attorney. And so please, if you have any questions, reach out to us at info@mybshow.com, and definitely look Ray up. And he is the person to go to for this, and he's my go-to person. If they catch me on a bad day and I'm very boisterous that day, you're gonna be the first call that my husband's probably gonna make after I talk to him, but not discuss it. Thank you. But not discuss the case with him on the phone, because that's a no-no as well.
Don't talk about the case, man. Nothing breaks my heart more. It's like, oh, why'd you talk about it?
I didn't realize that they were listening to that.
Well, here's the thing. They tell you when you're on the recording, this is a recorded call.
Oh, okay.
And,
Wow.
and people tell everything. I'm like, man, really? Why did you have to say that?
They're nervous. I think what happens is people get very nervous and afraid and scared, and they just react. They're in a reactionary mode rather than a planning mode.
I blame TV for that. Too much TV. They see people do it on TV, and it's like, don't do that. TV's wrong. Like, it's really wrong. Don't do that. But people think
all the Law and Orders, all the everything that's out there. Yeah. But I'll give the floor to you for your last word, and then I'll do my wrap up.
My last word would be this. A lot of times with police interactions, I think a lot of things can just be resolved by, don't take it personal, right? Like, this officer doesn't know you personally. 9 times out of 10, they're not doing it because it's you, yourself, the individual. They're just doing it because it's their job. You just happen to be the person that they saw there. Because if you don't take it personal, then you don't have the tendency to like rile up and do all those things. Right. Because, it's not you, it's just them doing their job. You don't make their job for them. Just keep it as simple as possible, right? And my last word is, don't take anything personal in life except the check. All other things don't matter. So
I love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Ray, for doing this a very last minute. And you are my colleague and my friend, and I really, really appreciate your input. My bottom line, very simple today: know your rights. Know what to do, what not to do. And if you don't know, what's the saying? You better ask somebody. Yeah. Raise the person to ask. And just, be safe out there. It's a very strained climate that we have out there, especially for those in our community. And I just want to let everyone know that, there is solidarity with us, and to be safe and conduct yourself accordingly. Don't give people reason, like Ray said, don't give them a reason to make you that personal target that day. And, be safe. And I don't have a mind in your business ending today, Lisa, because we're not really talking about business, but we can say mind in your business as in like your personal life. Yes. So be calm, be safe, and success comes when you're minding your business. Yeah.
The content on Mind in Your Business is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific legal advice. This show discusses general legal issues affecting business owners. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily that of the show. If you need assistance with your specific legal issue, please consult with a licensed attorney.